Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from StreetScores, and the NFL players have spoken. Over 1,600 NFL players have voted Washington as one of the top 2025 free agency destinations. And remember, we have the third most cap space. You cut Jonathan Allen, we have the second most cap space in the NFL. On top of all of this, also Dan Quinn was voted the #1 head coach in the NFL. Josh Harris has done a great job. We're gonna dive into all of the different grades and sections because it's broken up, and again, we're gonna do like the full breakdown of each one: treatment of families, food and dining, nutrition, locker room, training staff, weight room, strength coaches, team travel, head coach, and ownership as well. Y'all already know I have a piece of trivia for you. I'm gonna have that for you at the end of this video, a fun fact. And before we dive into everything, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get a notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned to all of the content. You know I'm gonna keep y'all updated with everything Commander, so make sure you stay tuned. I'm trying to get back to my multiple videos a day back. I was able to do 2 yesterday. I'm gonna try to do 2 or 3 today, so make sure you just keep coming back to the channel. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this video right now. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so shouts out to Josh Harris because he even said it himself. He said last year, after we were ranked the worst team out of all 32 NFL teams with this NFLPA player voted report card, that boy Josh Harris said, I'm not an F- guy. And Josh Harris definitely was telling the truth because the Commanders jumped 20 spots from 31st in 2024 to 11th in 2025 in this new NFLPA player voting poll. I mean, to jump from 31st, nearly 30. I mean, we were like dead last in certain categories, but I believe overall we ended up 31st. I think it was the Arizona Cardinals who actually technically was dead last. But man, to jump all the way from back there to 11th, nearly top 10 with the, I mean, we haven't even had a chance to fix the facilities. We're going to dive into that. That's literally the only thing that's holding us back from being top 5, but there's only so much you could do until you get like the new facilities, you get the new stadium and things like that. Again, we're gonna dive into that later. My point is though, remember that boy Bruce Allen, what'd he say? The culture is what? Hey man, it's definitely that right now. It's definitely good right now. The culture is carrying our grade right now. Again, we're gonna dive into that later with the facilities and everything. But the NFLPA says this, before you even get into their report card, their message is, one of our core jobs as a union is to improve the overall working conditions for our players, which includes the daily experience of players at the team facilities away from the lights and the cameras. What happens when the game is over? What happens before the game? What happens after the game? Off the field? The things that, you know, us general people can't see. 1,695 of our players provided information to share with one another about their current club to not only help them make important career decisions, but also help raise standards across the league. So now you have a better idea of not only how many people voted, but how and why they voted what they voted. So Washington, again, was last in the first NFLPA survey when it came out in 2023. I believe we were 31st in 2024. Now we're 11th in 2025. That's how that went. And I mean, shouts out to Ref the District because I completely agree. After wins, this is the #1 priority of any successful organization. Shouts out to Josh Harris, hats off to him, Markine, Magic Johnson, Mitchell Rails, and the rest of the ownership group, everybody that's contributing. And we are proud to be Commanders fans because it feels like Commanders players are proud to be a part of this Commanders culture. And so, shouts out to Ben Standig for also pointing out the fact that, again, Josh Harris is not an F- guy. He literally said that, and then he was ranked among top 5 out of all owners in aiding a positive culture and commitment to winning. Again, we're gonna dive into every part of the report card. There's 11 different categories. Josh Harris ownership is one of them, and then treatment of families went from an F- to a B+. I mean, that's one of the most notable jumps. We're going to compare everything, though. We're going to compare our 2024 grades to our 2025 grades. So don't worry. We're going to look at every single one and the differences there. And then also, most notably, first of all, Josh Harris being a top 5 owner, but also Dan Quinn being literally the #1 head coach. Not one of the top head coaches, no, literally the head coach, the king head coach out of the entire NFL. Out of every head coach in the NFL, Dan Quinn ranked #1 according to 695 players voting. That is absolutely insane. That also shows you that he should have been coach of the year. I felt like just off of the fact that he took a team from 4 wins to 12 wins in the regular season, 14 wins overall, with 2 of them being in the playoffs, making it to the NFC Championship with all of the holes that we had on our roster. I mean, I feel like Jaden Daniels deserves a lot of credit. Cliff Kingsbury deserves a lot of credit. A lot of people deserve a lot of credit for, masking over and, making do with all of the holes that we still had on the roster. But I feel like Dan Quinn deserves a lot of the credit because remember, even when I was down on the Dan Quinn hiring, even though I didn't hate it, my whole thing was I want an offensive-minded genius because that's where the NFL seems to be going. But I kept saying, even while I was preferring like a Ben Johnson or a Bobby Slowick, which looks crazy right now, I can admit, but even back then, the glass half full was, if we do end up hiring Dan Quinn, this is what I was saying back then, at the very least, he's going to be able to put together a better staff than any of these other potential head coaches. Between him, Ben Johnson, Mike McDaniels, or Bobby Slowick, any of these other head coaching candidates that were available, like this time last year, basically, Dan Quinn was going to be the one that could put together the best staff. And what's even crazier is that I was saying that while we were the only team without a head coach. We were the very last team to hire our head coach out of everybody in the hiring cycle. We had to literally go to the Senior Bowl without our head coach. Every other team in the NFL had their head coach at the Senior Bowl. I don't believe ours showed up ever at any point, or maybe he showed up at like the very last. I don't think he was there at all. I don't think he ever attended the Senior Bowl in 2024. This past Senior Bowl was probably the first one that Dan Quinn actually had with the Commanders, and then we kind of got there late because we were still in the playoffs. So, it's amazing when you really look back at how everything played out. But again, there's no surprise to me that this staff, now granted, it was even better than my best case scenario. It turned out even better than I predicted. But again, I was saying even back when I preferred Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, and all of those guys, ignorant me, that at the very least, Dan Quinn's going to be able to put together the best staff due to his relationships with coaches around the league. He's been there, done that, won Super Bowls and everything like that. Now look at the situation and then the staff that he was able to put together here, and the fact that, and on top of that, after all of the success we just had last year, Dan Quinn is probably the majority of the reason why we were able to retain so many of our coaches. Brian Johnson getting head coaching interviews. Same thing with Joe Wood Jr., even though I'm not sure if that was real. Maybe that was just like a Rooney Rule type of thing. Who knows? But maybe there was honest interest right there. Then you have David Blau, even Ben Johnson and a few other teams trying to steal our assistant quarterbacks coach. He stayed. Our actual quarterbacks coach, Tavita Pritchard, stayed, even though people were trying to offer him offensive coordinator jobs. I'm not sure if any of those offers were real, but at the very least, he interviewed for them. Cliff Kingsbury, outside of Ben Johnson, was the hottest name on the head coaching market. He stayed. Anthony Lynn has been a head coach, been there, done that, every level of football possible coaching-wise. He stayed as well. I feel like Dan Quinn is one of the main reasons, not only that we were able to get all of these elite coaches, but also why we were able to retain them. Again, going from 4 wins to 14 in just one season, should have won him coach of the year off rip, just off the bat. And then on top of that, the relationships that he has with players, the fact that out of 1,695 NFL players that voted, they felt like Dan Quinn was literally the best head coach in the NFL, or at the very least the one they liked the most. So you have the stats, you have the productivity, you have proof of product there from 4 to 14 wins, and then you also have the everything off the field, motivation, all of that type of stuff. Again, we're going to dive into each category, like why each part of our organization got the grade that they got. We're going to dive into Dan Quinn's grade. But again, my main point is he should have won coach of the year. And I don't even feel like it should have honestly been even close close to the guy in second place. Just off of 4 to 14 alone. I know I keep saying it, but 4 to 14 is insane. No other head coach had to do more with less this past season than Dan Quinn. All the while being the most liked coach in the entire NFL is insane. But honestly, all that really matters right now is that we know, I mean, it would have been nice if we won Coach of the Year, but at the very least we know for sure, 100%, without a doubt, he was the right hire. Think about the recruiting pitch from this right now. Dan Quinn being voted the #1 head coach in the NFL. And again, since this was voted by players themselves, Dan Quinn doesn't even have to actively recruit. His name holds weight. Like, the players already think that highly of him. They think he's the best head coach in the NFL. So the recruiting is going to do itself. People are going to want to come to the Commanders just for Dan Quinn alone, let alone Jaden Daniels. I mean, the rest of the NFL should feel lucky that there isn't a 12th category of favorite quarterback that they would love to play with or something like that. Because Jaden Daniels easily would have been top 5 right there. Maybe even #1 just off of the personality as well. Because people clearly gravitate around Jaden Daniels. They were talking about Jaden Daniels, interviewing him. You even had Eagles fans talking about him even more than they were talking about their own team. I mean, everybody, the media just circled around Jaden Daniels the whole time he was at Super Bowl week and all of the media interviews and things like that. You saw him reaching more headlines as a player that didn't make the Super Bowl than both the Eagles and Chiefs combined, who were eventually playing in the Super Bowl. It's ridiculous. So Jaden Daniels is also a magnet along with Dan Quinn. We have a lot of strong magnets in this organization, and so it's really only up from here. I'm really excited about free agency. But shouts out to Brian Manning of Commanders Wire. He said, remember 1 year ago when Washington fans panicked after Dan Quinn was named head coach? I think the biggest thing for me was the fact that, like, we were the last ones to hire a head coach, and then we interviewed Dan Quinn and didn't hire him immediately. We were still waiting to talk to other guys, so it sounded like even Adam Peters and those guys didn't have Dan Quinn as the #1 option. That was my biggest thing, more so than Dan Quinn himself. I mean, who would deny a coach that has won a Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator and gone to a Super Bowl as a head coach? Even though 28-3 is a thing, I mean, it wasn't Dan Quinn himself. It was more so the fact that even the Commanders themselves didn't feel like, oh, we got to get Dan Quinn and we need him. Like, off of the first interview, we're gonna hire him. But then again, maybe they was just doing their due diligence. Maybe I was overthinking it. Either way, though, remember the comments from fans that Quinn was another Ron Rivera, a second-time defensive-minded head coach with an average record? I wouldn't go to say Ron Rivera. I definitely thought Quinn was better than Ron Rivera, but I didn't think it would turn out to be what it is now. I was somewhere in the middle, I can admit. What a difference a year makes. Quinn led the Commanders to a 12-5 record and an appearance in an NFC Championship game. Pressed last offseason to talk about Washington's rebuild, Quinn never used that word. Instead, he called it a recalibration. And hey, that boy Dan Quinn had some insane insight. I guess he foresaw all of this happening, because that is a thing. Remember that. He never, ever used the word rebuild. He kept correcting people that would call it a rebuild. He would correct them and say, no, it's a recalibration, basically saying, no, we're not about to be bad this upcoming season. Now look, NFC Championship game. Quinn and general manager Adam Peters always believed that the Commanders would be better than anyone realized. That's a big point. That's probably another reason why players loved them. Somehow Quinn didn't win NFL Coach of the Year. I agree. Finishing 4th, that's the most disrespectful part. Not even the fact that he didn't win, but he finished 4th. You can find 3 head coaches that did a better job in 2024 than Dan Quinn. That's insane. However, on Wednesday, players voted Quinn as the NFL's #1 coach in the latest NFLPA report cards. And I'm not going to lie, I prefer for him to be #1 according to 695 active NFL players voting than for him to win Coach of the Year by some AP vote from the media members that, whatever that bias voting that they had going on, especially with Jaden Daniels not being a unanimous vote winner. So at the end of the day, I feel like we do get the last laugh. 695 actual active NFL players feel like Dan Quinn is actually the best coach in the NFL. I'll take that any day over those random 50 media members that we don't even trust anyways, who their votes and things like that. Also, if you ask Quinn which was more important, he'd politely tell you it was what the players said. Well, the players have spoken. Every single Washington player believed in Quinn. When players and assistant coaches talked to the media, they all spoke the same language. It was all about team goals. You won't find any Commanders fans belittling Dan Quinn these days. And remember, even just last offseason, fresh off of 4 wins, hadn't accomplished nothing, hadn't played a single game under Dan Quinn yet. We were able to convince several players, most notably Jeremy Chin, to come here for less money than they would have gotten elsewhere. That was after 4 wins. Imagine what's going to happen after 12 regular season wins, 14 wins total, going to an NFC championship. Imagine what free agency is going to look like now. And I feel like these grades and what the players voted reflect that. And then again, they're lucky that we can't include Jaden Daniels in that vote, because we would have ranked even higher. So the Commanders moved from 32nd to 11th in NFLPA's annual report cards for teams' treatment of their players based on the results of its survey of players. Just to let you know, Jets ownership was the only F in the NFLPA team report cards when it came to the ownership category. We'll get there later. But now let's dive into the actual report card, which is more than likely why y'all are here. And let me politely move myself out of the way so y'all can see. Again, we ranked 11th out of 32 teams, and we're about to dive into this. First of all, I think the overview is interesting. I feel like this is very noteworthy. They said, after finishing last for 2 consecutive years, the Washington Commanders surged to 11th overall. The Commanders' improved rating reflects how meaningful improvements to players' daily experience can be achieved, even with physical facility limitations. Again, that's going to be the theme of all of this. Everything that we can control, elite. Things that we can't control, not as good, because it's still hard to make do and to recover from what the damage that Dan Snyder did to this team, even just outside of the players, coaches, and front office, just facilities wise, the lack of attention, the lack of resources placed into the facilities. There's only so much you could do in 2 years from that. So you'll see that's going to be reflected into the grades. Key to the turnaround was the hiring of Dan Quinn, who finished the season as the #1 ranked head coach across the league. Additionally, the team invested in the food program, improving their grade from D+ to a B+, and they also increased the frequency of family events and began providing daycare during home games, which boosted their grade for treatments of families, rising from an F-, golly, Dan Snyder, to a B+. The improvement in team travel is also notable, with 95% of players reporting comfortable personal space on flights, up from 50% last year. Dan Snyder, you had half of the players saying that they weren't comfortable on flights. Half? 1 of every 2? That's insane. And again, F- treatment of families to B+ is absolutely insane. That's one of those ones where, like, where you're ranked, I feel like should matter more. But the fact that we had an F- is crazy. Like, that means that we were like the worst possible. Like, that's absolutely insane to me. Like, ranking cool, but actual grade F- is even more shocking to me. The team strength coaches deserve special recognition for maintaining an A rating year after year. Good point. Even under Dan Snyder, them strength coaches be going crazy. Again, we're going to look at that too. Despite progress, the facility itself remains a major issue. The building is old and in need of major renovation. Players singled out the locker room as the area that needs attention. When asked what the team does best, the most consistent response is clear. They are positively changing the culture, and it shows both in survey results and on the field. Now let's get to it. As you can see, these grades right here, we'll kind of just, we'll scroll through real quick, because again, we're about to go through every single one of these. When it comes to treatment of families, again, we went from an F- to a B+. That is absolutely insane. And they said the Commanders have begun providing daycare during home games. That's insane. That's beautiful. I feel like that should have been happening, but that's still a great thing for Josh Harris to implement. I don't exactly know whose idea it is, but shouts out to the ownership group. They are one of only 10 teams that do not provide a family room during home games. So, hey, that's the way that we could go from B+ to A+. If you're asking yourself, why are we only a B+ in this category? I mean, again, the leap from F- to B+ is still already amazing. But if you want to finish it all the way and go all the way to the top, you got to get that family room. Also, players rate the post-game family area 7.71 out of 10, ranking them 13th out of 32 teams, not bad. And the players report that the team frequently organizes family events, which ranks 2nd out of 32. So we are the 2nd best team out of the entire NFL, according to players, in at least organizing family events. They feel like we need to be just a little bit more accommodating at the stadium, but when it comes to family events, we are the 2nd out of the entire NFL. That's going to hold weight in free agency. When you're wondering, on top of the fact that we have Dan Quinn, on top of Jaden Daniels, on top of the winning that we did last year, the culture and everything. If you're wondering why maybe not only are we signing free agents that you didn't expect, but maybe we're also signing them to cheaper money than what their market value was expected, or cheaper than what other teams would have had to sign them for, it's little things like this. Because just imagine yourself as a player. How would you want your family treated? And if Team A is offering you a little bit more money, but they treat your family poorly, versus Team B, the Washington Commanders, in a situation where maybe they're offering you a little less money, but they give you a better opportunity to win. They have a way better culture. They have the best head coach according to players in the NFL. Jaden Daniels is the talk of the town at quarterback right now, and he's still very young, rookie contract. And then on top of that, they treat your family very well. Why would you not choose Team B? Even if there is a discrepancy and maybe even a couple of $1 million in the contracts offered between both teams, you're gonna go with Team B. Just as plain as, just again, put yourself in their shoes. I know money is a lot, but money isn't always literally everything down to the very last dollar. You will sacrifice some dollars for some of these sorts of like amenities and benefits and things like that. Now let's talk about food and dining area. So we've ranked a 12th out of 32 teams here with another B+, and that's still amazing that we climbed to B+. Again, we're going to take a look at the grades compared to what we had last year. That's pretty amazing. So the Washington Commanders rate the taste of their team's food 8.74 out of 10. Of a ranking of 9 out of 32. So we're top 10 in taste of food, you know. Maybe that matters. Hey, I ain't gonna lie. I'm not saying all of y'all should base where you, if you were a player, base where you going free agency based off of this. I'm not gonna lie. I probably would. I'm an extremely picky eater. I'm sorry. That would have had me even a little bit. I mean, that wouldn't have been the end all be all. But hey, man, top 10 in food. Hey, I ain't gonna lie. I'm pulling up. You know what I'm saying? At least give me a plate, you know what I'm saying? And then also they rate the freshness of their food 9 out of 10, which was 8 out of 32. So also the food is fresh. It's not just 3D printed food that probably Dan Snyder had us going. The space food where it's just a little glob, then you heat it up, add some water, and then now suddenly it's a three course meal. You know how Plankton was over there eating the hologram food. We're not doing that no more. Also, the players rate their dining area 8.37 out of 10, ranking 19 out of 32 NFL teams in dining areas. So again, this is a facilities problem. We get a new facilities, I'm pretty sure we could jump to top 5, but right now it's only but so much you can do with the current infrastructure that we have. You can do all of these renovations that you want, but just the overall infrastructure that Dan Snyder built, it's so limiting. And so, hey, I'm proud of what we've achieved. And again, I'll take better food over better dining area. I'll sit outside if I got to, as long as the food good. And then nutritionist, dietitian, we're still C+, which is 29th out of 32 teams. Got to be better there. Now that's something that we can control. So, but it's only but so much you could do within a 2-year span, which is, I mean, even just compared to last year what we were in a 1-year span. So maybe this is one of the things that they slightly overlooked, which I'm not going to complain about, but hey, watch out. This is something we got to improve. Everything just isn't flowers and rainbows. There are still aspects of the team that we need to work on. And they said 66% of players report that they get an individualized nutrition plan, ranking the Commanders 31 out of 32. So we got to get on that. That is in our control. We cannot blame Dan Snyder for that one. The players feel that their team dietitian is moderately accessible, ranking 27 out of 32. Hey, pick up your phone. Where are you at during office hours, or even outside of office hours, man? We need you on it. There's no reason we'll rank 27th out of 32 in something like that. Whoever our dietitian is, you need to get on it, my boy. Then locker room, this is where you can blame Dan Snyder. There's only but so much you can do when it comes to fixing the facilities. But either way, man, F. But hey, even an F is still 29 out of 32 teams. What are those other 3 teams' excuses? Hey, man, hey. But also, 43% of players feel that they have enough room in their individual lockers, a ranking of 31 out of 32. That's terrible. But again, the infrastructure. Now, we can place a lot of this blame on Dan Snyder. 49% of players feel the locker room size is adequate, ranking 29th out of 32 players. The team needs a new locker room with bigger lockers and more space. Also, 37% of players report ongoing plumbing problems in the locker room. Bruh, just tear the whole thing down and start a new facility, man. And I know that they may not want to do it immediately, so this is probably something that we're just going to have to be bad at in grades for the next couple of years. But, hey, man, we got to do what we got to do. You got to tear that thing down, but they just won't. That's just too much of an investment to make to not even know exactly where your new stadium is going to be. They probably want the new facilities really close to the new stadium. We'll see. Then training room, C+, 23rd out of 32. Again, with the infrastructure that's in place, there's only so much that you could do. There is a limit, but hey, we're still better than 9 other teams out there. And then they said 88% of Commanders players feel they have enough full-time trainers, ranking them 17 out of 32 teams. That's something we can control. Add more full-time trainers. 88% of players feel they have enough full-time physical therapists, a ranking 11 out of 32. That's still really good, but there's room for improvement. I want to be top 5 in every category, literally. I mean, I'm shooting for number 1, honestly. I want to be number 1 in all of these. That's just how competitive I am, but that's just me. 73% of players feel that they have enough hot tub space, a ranking of 23 out of 32. I feel like maybe that's something that you can improve even without having to change the entire infrastructure. That seems like that's small enough for you to fix. Same thing, 76% of players feel like they have enough cold tub space, and that's a ranking 21 out of 32. Still like slightly below average, not terrible, but something that we can improve on. Training staffs, pretty good, you know what I'm saying? Shouts out to us for the B+, 11th out of 32 teams. They said 92% of the Commanders players report that they receive enough one-on-one training treatment, ranking them 6 out of 32 teams. The players feel that their training staff moderately contributes to their overall success, ranking them 15th out of 32. I'll take it, but there's room for improvement. I'm not accepting average or slightly above average. I want the best. Then you have weight room, B-, 25th out of 32. Now, I feel like this is partially infrastructure. I also feel like that this is something they can work on even with the infrastructure that they currently hold. Even if you just got to build a separate little building real quick, like a little tent or something to help improve something like this. But they said the players feel their weight room equipment is good quality, ranking them 16 out of 32. That's all right. That's average. The players do not feel like they have enough space to train effectively, though. That's the problem. There we go. Ranking 29th out of 32. They don't have enough space. We have good equipment, just not enough space. We need a bigger weight room, plain and simple. That's literally what they said right there. Josh Harris, I hope I mean, this is great feedback. This is actual feedback that Josh Harris and company can look at, utilize, and be like, okay, this is where we need to improve. This is where we need to stay consistent. And I truly believe that these things matter. This is not just for us fans to look at. I truly believe head coaches and GMs and owners, everybody, team presidents, look at this stuff, and then we'll utilize this information moving forward as far as strategies to improve their team and make them a more accommodating and preferred free agency destination. Then you have strength coaches. A, 3rd out of 32 NFL teams. Let's go, boy. We got them swole boys in there, huh? 98% of players report that they get an individualized plan from their strength NFL coaching staff, ranking them 4 out of 32. I'll take it. Also, players feel that their strength coaches significantly contribute to the overall success, of rank of 5 out of 32. Yes, sir. That's something that we can control, and we controlled it. I'm still shooting for number 1, but hey, 3rd out of 32 teams ain't bad. Then team travel. Now, this is something definitely that you can control. This is not something we can blame on Dan Snyder if we had a low grade. Hey, good thing is we don't. We rank 4th out of 32 NFL teams with an A grade. They said 95% of the Commanders players believe they have a comfortable amount of personal space on team flights, ranking them 8th out of 32. The players also feel that their team's travel schedule is very efficient, ranking 3rd out of 32 teams. These are all things that you can control. We controlled it. Love it. And then head coach, the head honcho himself, A+, 1st out of all 32 NFL teams. 100% of the Commanders players, 100%, feel that their head coach Dan Quinn is efficient with their time. He is one of 6 head coaches across the NFL to receive a perfect score. Let's go. Also, the players feel that Dan Quinn is highly receptive to the locker room feedback on the team's needs, ranking him 1 out of 32 head coaches in the league, which means he's the best at listening. He's the best listener and adapter, responder, whatever you want to call it. Dan Quinn is the best at that in the entire NFL. We're not necessarily talking about X's and O's here, even though that is a part of it. Maybe players asking for changes, you know, in the strategy, especially defensively, and he's taking those things into account and accommodating in that way. Like, okay, you prefer to do this on these types of plays, these type of situations, we'll do that. But it's more so also just, you know, as far as like helping the players off the field with a lot of things, Dan Quinn seems to be the most accommodating and open-minded head coach in the entire NFL. You can't convince me that's not going to increase our chances of getting some of the top free agents that we want in like a couple of weeks. I'm telling you right now. And then ownership. We got an A right there too, man. And whoo, boy, that ownership grade used to be atrocious that first time they did it in 2023. Either way, we're 8th out of 32 teams. Again, this is something I want to be number 1 in, but there's only so much you can do in 2 years. Either way, owner Josh Harris's average rating for perceived willingness to invest in the facilities is 9.24 out of 10. From the Commanders players, a ranking 10 out of 32. So, hey, at least Josh Harris and them are showing the players like, hey, we're trying. At the very least, we're 10th out of 32 owners and at least trying. Like, you see that, we want to spend this money. There's just only so much we could do with the current infrastructure and the land that we have, all of these things that basically Dan Snyder set us up for failure, and we're doing the best with what we have, basically. And then the players feel that Harris significantly contributes to a positive team culture, ranking 4th out of 32. I mean, I'm pretty sure him coming to the locker room celebrating as if he's like one of the biggest fans of the team, like he's one of us, and which he really is. He grew up a Commanders fan and everything, Redskins fan technically, all of that. He's in the locker room celebrating with them with the game balls. He's drunk. I'm pretty sure the players love that type of stuff. And then also the players feel that Harris is extremely committed to building a competitive team, a rank 4 out of 32 in the NFL. So the players believe that Josh Harris will do whatever it takes to win. So not only do they feel like he's going to do whatever it takes to make sure the culture is good, to make sure the facilities are all right, and basically doing the best. Basically, the players acknowledge the fact that Dan Snyder set you up for failure, but at least Josh Harris, you're doing everything in your power to make what we have to work with off of the field as great as possible. And then on top of that, the players also feel like Josh Harris is willing to do whatever it takes, money-wise as well, commitment, resources, to put together a Super Bowl champion. That's 4th out of 32 NFL teams. I love that. So the players love Dan Quinn, first out of the NFL, and then when it comes to being committed to spending money, building a team culture, and building a Super Bowl champion, Josh Harris is 4th out of 32 NFL owners, man. I feel like we're doing pretty good for ourselves, huh? And I also want to point out the fact that Josh Harris has repeatedly acknowledged the fact that the training facilities and locker rooms will be addressed. They just wanted to focus a lot of their money on like the actual stadium experience that the fans have to deal with. They wanted to prioritize that. You saw that they vastly improved the training camp experience for not only fans but players as well. And then of course, from some of the grades that you'll see in comparison from what we did last year to this year, you'll basically see what they prioritized in 1 year. Now I'm pretty sure they're going to focus on the other things this upcoming year, just to let you know. And also, shouts out to Sam 48 because he brings up a good point. This is a good picture of the franchise, basically saying that this entire survey perfectly encompasses where the Commanders are right now. I feel like this literally symbolizes where we are because the people have high remarks. The facilities got lower remarks. The people are improving the facilities, but can't truly overhaul them until there's a new stadium. There's only but so much you can do. Again, which you can control and change, which is the culture and things like that. They're killing that. It's just the other stuff, man. And so also Ben Standig said that the NFLPA said data does not reflect the correlation between report card grades and on-field performance. That said, players said positive vibes and Ashburn helped the cause. When asked what the team does best, the most consistent response is clear. They are positively changing the culture, and it shows both on the field and in the survey results. I absolutely love to hear that. Now let's take a look at the 2024 grades by category compared to the 2025. The building is building, and the investments that were made were hits. We just still have a long way to go in certain categories. Now, if you look on the screen right now, from treatment of families to F- to B+ is absolutely insane, man. Then food and dining from D+ to B+, I'm pulling up and getting me a plate. From nutrition diet, B- to C+. Wow, we actually went down in a category. I'm curious as to why. Then locker room, F- to F. There's an improvement, but it's still terrible. Training room, F- to C+. Big improvement, but still not good. Training staff, F to B+ is amazing. Something you can control, and they weren't playing about it. Weight room, C to B-. I think infrastructure, and again, the reason was there's not enough space. They have great equipment, not enough space. There's only but so much you could do until we get a new stadium and new facilities. So, I mean, they're going to try to increase that from a B-, but there's only but so much you could do. Strength coaches stayed A straight through. So even from the Dan Snyder era, somehow we had A strength coaches. I'm glad that we made sure that focusing on improving other things didn't allow allow us to let that drop off. We made sure we kept that. Then team travel from F to A. That is our biggest jump. That is absolutely insane. Head coach from C, Ron Rivera, to A+. Number one. Mind you, not just A+, number one out of all head coaches. And then ownership B to A. And again, that B was last year before players knew what Josh Harris was going to do. Remember, Josh Harris was a part of that 2024 grade, but he was here, but he wasn't able to, he didn't have enough time to really change anything. So that was more so just, he got a B purely just off of, well, at least he's not Dan Snyder, and we're optimistic that he may be able to do things, but he hasn't had a chance to actually do them. Now, after a year of actually showing what he can do, he went from a B to an A. Just to kind of provide context right there. Now, moving on. Shouts out to George Carmi for going back on the Dan Quinn situation again. Because just to go back and talk on that, he said, I'm more impressed with the A+ rating for Dan Quinn. It's a powerful thing when your team has a full investment in his head coach. Players put in more effort on the field. That's important. Are more committed to self-improvement. That's very important. And recruit their friends to join the team. Team morale is king, and that's going to play a big part. And again, don't sleep on Josh Harris, because that man had an A as well, even though, again, Dan Quinn was number one. He was number one. Also, again, just the one negative is just why did the nutrition and dietitian go down from a B- to a C+? I really want to make sure we get that one. That's the only thing that we lost a rating on. That's the only thing that we went down from last year to this year. But again, they basically said that they feel like the guys, the dietitians or whatever, are not accessible. So we need to get on them about that. That's something that we can't control. So the one way that we went down on a rating, and it wasn't a huge drop, it went from B- to C+. So it wasn't it wasn't even an entire grade, but at the same time, we can't go backwards in any way. I don't care how minute you feel like the category is as far as impact on the team's winning and success and player happiness. I still don't want to go down in any category, because they have these categories for a reason. And I'm not just going to overlook or ignore a category because we feel like that one category isn't as important as another. I don't care. We improved in a lot of ways, but I don't like the fact that we still went down in one way. But now, I also want to talk about the fact that even outside of what the players are saying, how about media and ex-players? Because it's not just us or even the over 1,600 players that voted that are saying the Washington Commanders are the number one free agency destination. Because remember, Adam Schefter back on November 2nd put out an article saying, here's a sentence that hasn't been written or uttered this century. Since before Dan Snyder owned an NFL franchise, players want to wind up in Washington playing for the Commanders. In recent weeks, there have been players who privately stated or told their agents that they wanted to be traded to the Commanders, league sources told ESPN. But even if the Commanders can't complete any trades by the deadline, the fact that certain players would like to land in Washington bodes well for the franchise in free agency and in years to come. It's a function of the new ownership, a new front office, a new coaching staff, and maybe most importantly, rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels, who is contended not only for NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year, but also potentially for an MVP award at that time. And then, the injuries hit. We went on a 3-game losing streak and all of that, but you saw how we ended the season, so I'm not worried about that at all. For years, decades even, Washington was viewed as an NFL wasteland, a toxic environment plagued by issues under Snyder's ownership that dragged down the franchise. But with all of the adjustments the Commanders have made, mind you, in 1 year, one offseason, the newest and ultimate sign of how much has changed can be gauged by the fact that players want to come to Washington before the deadline. Then you have Mike Florio, who slightly disagrees with Adam Schefter, but you'll see, he'll bring it back around at the end. So Mike Florio said that he heard talk about last October's trade deadline and that agents were saying their players wanted to go to Washington and that he basically wasn't buying it. He said, quote, "I thought that was a load of crap. I thought it was overdone a bit. But I don't think it will be overdone during the free agency signing period in March. And I think that it will be a factor. I think Jaden Daniels' performance over the course of the year and specifically in the postseason is going to attract guys with options. All things equal, I am going to play for the Commanders. We are going to see that in free agency this year," unquote. So at first, Mike Florio had me at first. He was like, oh, here we go with the Mike Florio hating again. But then he brought it back around and basically said, yeah, I feel like honestly, Commanders will win a lot of jump balls when it comes to, I have this team and these other teams, and they're all offering me relatively around the same money. I'm going to the Commanders. Then you had Charles Woodson, Hall of Famer himself, the elite Charles Woodson, no attachment to the Commanders whatsoever. asked about Jaden Daniels during Super Bowl week, and he said, quote, going forward, there are going to be a lot of guys that are going to want to come play with Jaden Daniels, unquote. And then on top of all of that, look at this cap space, and I've shown y'all this in like another video like a couple of weeks ago, but just to reiterate, now granted, things have changed since this tweet was made, since this chart was put together back on January 20th. But my point is that the Commanders have one of the best cap space situations as well. So not only from what we've already previously talked about for the last 40 minutes, we have that on our side in a big way. But then even on top of that, we have the money in the cap space to make things happen in free agency as well, which is why we are the #1 free agency destination in the entire NFL. The last 40 minutes is the biggest part. And then on top of that, do you have any money to actually do something with all of the last 40 minutes? Yes, we do. Because top left is basically locked in rosters that could expand. Bottom left, all in rosters for 2025. They're pretty much who they are. There's not going to be many changes. Bottom right may have to let some free agents go because they're bad in cap space, and it's just they don't have any money to spend, and it's not looking good. And then top right, cap dollars to burn to fill looming roster holes. We're out there with basically the Vikings and the Chargers. Again, things have changed since January 20th. A lot of players have, well, I mean, first of all, we're planning on either trading or releasing Jonathan Allen, so we're actually going to improve on this chart, but a lot of other teams have improved as well. Really, everybody's starting to move more to the top because they're cutting players, they're allowing players to seek trades and things like that. So everybody's kind of improving since the last time we put this out, but still, you can just kind of see relatively compared to other teams where the Commanders are in cap space and being where we are, just to let you know, even if you don't truly understand what's going on here, is fantastic. We are in a great spot cap space wise, because again, you have like the Patriots at the top left who have all of this cap space, but their team is so bad it doesn't matter. It's basically the point. That top left, yeah, you have a lot of cap space, but what you gonna do with it? You're still gonna be bad even potentially even after you spend it. And then you have the Commanders, relatively good team, but still have a lot of cap space to spend to improve and build on that great team. So the top right is literally where you want to be, and look at where we are relative to everybody else in the NFL. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section, let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please still follow that like button, still follow the subscription button, still follow the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Really appreciate y'all. If you made it this far in the video, I really appreciate you. I didn't even expect to talk about this for this long. I thought this would be like a quick 20-minute video, but y'all know how I get it, man. Y'all know I'm gonna do super deep dives on everything. I should have expected myself to make this video and it end up being this long, but either way, I really appreciate you. If you made it this far in the video, big salute to you. And as promised, I have a fun fact for you for the day. You know, we have our trivia and fun facts every single day. Fun fact for today: wideout Terry McLaurin entered his 5th season in 2023, needing 1 catch to become the 11th player with 300 career receptions for Washington. Yeah, that's crazy that he was just 1 catch away in 2022. But either way, that's an interesting fun fact. I prefer the trivia questions. I don't really like the fun facts never usually are as good as the trivia questions. Plus, I think it's a little bit more fun to ask y'all a question and for y'all to guess the answer by the end of the video. Without researching, don't cheat. But either way, hey, whatever the calendar says goes. So I have the next one for tomorrow, January 28th. Even though I do plan on doing another video or two, we'll just do the next trivia question tomorrow because it's due for January 28th. Either way, man, I really appreciate y'all. Of course, let me know in the comment section. I'm gonna try my best to find some time to read and reply to as many comments as possible because I really want to know how y'all feel about everything that we just talked about in this video. Like, are you just as optimistic as I am, as the players are, about the future of the Washington Commanders? Do you think we're going to kill it in free agency even more now that you've heard how the players feel about the Washington Commanders and where we grade and rank across the NFL in a lot of important categories? Let me know how you feel about all of that. Really appreciate y'all. Of course, most importantly, do not leave this video without leaving a like, and I'm gonna catch y'all later. Appreciate y'all. I'm out.